Welcome everybody to touring the AFC South. We are going to be talking this week about, of course, Carson Wentz and Mr. Nelson in Indianapolis. Both went down with foot injuries, of course. Going to be out for a while. They said 5 to 12 weeks. Of course, I don't know anything about being what a doctor would say or why or anything like that. So I figured I would bring somebody in that knows a little bit more about that than I do. Welcome, everybody, Dr. Erin Wilson. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thank you for having me. Like you said, my name is Erin. I'm a doctor of physical therapist. I treat out of Atlanta. A little bit about me. I did my undergrad at Florida State, and I got my bachelor's in sports medicine, exercise science, and then I went on to Emory University for my doctorate. So that's what brought me to Atlanta and kind of how I came into contact with Mike. So
yeah, well, there you have it. All right. Now, of course, we got the introductions done, but big injuries in Indianapolis, and definitely you have your best lineman in Nelson going down. You have Carson Wentz going down. And it's they're saying it's the fifth metatarsal of their feet. Can you tell everyone where that is in their foot?
Okay, so kind of basic anatomy in your foot. Your metatarsals are the long bones across the top of your foot that connect your toes to your ankles. So you basically need those bones to connect the foot together. Those 5 metatarsals kind of work in sequence. So they kind of work together to provide your foot with stability and balance. So whether that be with both feet on the ground or whether that be in single leg stance where you're just standing on one foot, you have to have your metatarsals in order for your foot to know where you are in space without you physically looking down at your foot. So basically, in order to stand, walk, balance, you need those bones intact. The 5th metatarsal itself, the one in question, the one that they both injured, is the one on the outside of your foot. So if you've ever run your foot across the outside of your foot, like where your pinky toe is, and you kind of hit like a little bump or not a nodule, it's just not straight down, that's your 5th metatarsal. It's a prominence there. You can't miss it. So with that particular bone and all the rest of the metatarsals, they're broken up into 3 areas. So you can either fracture the head of the bone, the shaft of the bone, or the base of the bone. And where you have the fracture is going to determine exactly what type of intervention they're going to do, whether it be non-surgical, surgical, and even if it's surgical, there's different surgeries that they can do depending on the person. So whether it be a lay, your common person, or an elite athlete is going to determine how your injury is treated.
Got you. So, how does this affect them moving on the football field, with playing different positions and all?
Well, I mean, it pretty much goes back to balance. You can't do anything off balance, and that's going to follow you from whether the snap of the ball, with your lineman, to your quarterback who has to roll out and throw the ball or has to hand it off to your running back. They can't do anything without balance, being able to balance from different positions on the field. Quarterbacks, how important their footwork is, especially if, him coming to a new team, he has to be able to move. So it's a pretty painful injury, and that kind of leads into why there's such a wide range in the recovery, whether it be 5 weeks to 12 weeks. A lot of that has to do with your pain tolerance. I mean, you have to stand on your feet.
Gotcha. And yeah, that definitely went into, definitely the thoughts I had on it as well. But, the interesting thing is both of them, they're talking about removing a bone in both of their feet. I mean, me personally, I've never heard of a surgery where you remove a bone from a foot. Can you kind of explain why they would do that?
So it really kind of goes into, and they only really have to disclose certain parts of a player's injury, so it goes back to the anatomy I was talking about. When you're talking about the bone, like I said, you have the head, you have the shaft, you have the base. Depending on where each of them fractured that bone is going to determine what they're going to do. So now when you're talking about taking a piece of bone out, that's the osteotomy. So that's just mean they're taking a piece of the bone out. Sometimes they do it to straighten the bone. so that prominence that I talk about isn't going to continuously rub or continuously irritate them. Also, when you're talking about removing a bone, sometimes in athletes, surgeons choose to go that route because when you take out a piece of something versus repair, that can kind of cut down on your limited weight bearing. So if we go to a little bit more anatomy, that part of the foot has very low blood circulation. Without good blood circulation, you can't have good bone healing. So if I take the bone out, that kind of takes out a step, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I put a pin there, I need blood flow to kind of make that pin kind of fuse into the bone and heal and make all that stuff work. So sometimes, and the same thing, with the knee. So sometimes doctors will opt to do a meniscectomy versus a meniscal repair. When you get a meniscal repair, you have to stay off of your knee for 6 weeks. When you have a meniscectomy, you're just taking a piece of the meniscus out. And so that way you can skip the non-weight bearing phase. And you can come back faster because you don't have to wait 6 weeks to start your rehab. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I always wondered why some get the meniscus repaired and some don't,
Mm-hmm. That's why. So like when Dwayne Wade was hurt. Yeah, when Dwayne Wade was hurt that time in the playoffs, they opted to do a meniscectomy so that he can come back faster. But then, doctors always caution that because meniscectomies have been shown to lead to early onset of arthritis. So it's a give and a take, when you're trying to get back to your sport and when you're thinking about your long-time health. So.
Gotcha. Now, we did talk about the window, 5 to 12 weeks, and you did talk about the long window of recovery. I mean, what does that entail for them and their feet?
Well, so usually your rehab is kind of, and it goes back to what type of fracture they have. Your rehab's really broken up into pretty much 3 or 4 different phases. So, your first phase, when you have your injury, week 1 or week 0, they decide what they're going to do. It's really painful. It's really swollen. It's tender to the touch. At that point, doctors don't really want you to put any weight on it. They want you to stay off of it. They encourage the RICE principle, your rest, your ice, your compression, your elevation, in order to get the swelling down. Sometimes they'll put you in a boot just to keep you from weight bearing. Suggest crutches, or the knee walker that a lot of athletes use. After that first week, once their swelling kind of subsides, then that's when they'll decide, okay, if they're going to do surgery, etc. The normal person like me, if I was to fracture my fifth metatarsal, my doctor would probably tell me stay off of it for 6 weeks, put on a boot or put on a short removable walking cast and do my rehab. They're not going to do surgery on it. They're just going to wait for it to heal. But in your athletes, you want them to come back to sport. You want them to come play. They want to do their job. So that's kind of why you go the other route, the surgical route. So week 0, pretty much not doing anything. We're resting, doing everything. Then they might have their surgery. Then when we go weeks 2 through 6, that's when you're still maybe starting to put weight on it. Your therapist or your athletic trainer is kind of teaching you how to walk again on that foot, heel to toe, the proper way you're supposed to walk. Putting weight bearing as tolerated, weight bearing as you can stand with your pain level. Then you kind of do other stuff. You're going to work your core. You're going to do any type of aerobic activity that you can do without weight bearing. Some people opt to have them start swimming, start cycling, etc. During those 2 to 6 weeks, maybe around week 4, you might go back for x-rays, kind of see how it's healing. That goes back to your blood supply to make sure everything's going well like you like. Then week 6 through 8 of your rehab, then you're going to start with more aggressive weight-bearing activities. You might do squats, you might do lunges, you might do more dynamic stuff. You probably still stay away from jumping because you don't want to really put that impact on the foot just yet. Once you get to kind of week 8 and out, depending on how it's healing, how it's doing, you might start like jogging, and then you might start your sport and your position-specific training just to get them back. So like I said, on the fast end, depending on how he's doing, how either one of them are doing, it could be 6 weeks, depending on how much pain they can tolerate. You know what I mean? If I would guess, I don't know either one of them personally, but I would take Quentin to come back a little bit faster. me personally. Once again, I don't know the exact fracture, but I would say as far as how they're going to be having to move him versus the quarterback, I would probably take him.
Gotcha. Yeah, you definitely got to the point. I was definitely going to ask, should Colts fans be worried if they're going to be out for the season? But it sounds like at the worst, it would be out till October, which is almost about half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking, let's just use August 1st as a landmark, that puts worst case scenario the end of October. And now we got a 17-week season, so they're playing until January 9th. So if they can just stay above water, they should be okay. I mean, they'll get them back in time as long as everything goes as planned.
Gotcha. Well, I want to thank you because you definitely broke that down for me because I was trying to figure out why 5 to 12 weeks and, what is going on, but makes perfect sense now. And I'm glad you were able to come on the show tonight. And, if you have anything going on or anything you want to mention to anybody that's listening, the floor is yours.
No, I mean, thank you for having me. Not only do I enjoy what I do, but I also enjoy, football, NFL, college. So whenever you want to chat, I'm available. Gotcha.
We may talk a little bit later down the line. Maybe if the Florida State Seminoles and of course my Tennessee Vols, they get better. We'll definitely talk about some college football then.
We gonna get better before y'all get better.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna act like I ain't hear that, but All right. Well, thank you for coming on, everyone. Thank you for listening. It's Touring the AFC South. Next segment will be Jake Arthur, and he's going to be talking about the impact on the field of losing Quentin Nelson and Carson Wentz. You're listening to Touring the AFC South with Mike Patton.